Introduce you and we can start. So today is July 17th, 2025. It's 4:16 p.m. Uh, Bamidele will have approximately 30 to 35 minutes to present his work, followed by committee questions, at which time all of the guests will be asked to leave the room. And then we will place Bamidele into a waiting room to deliberate, and then we'll bring him back, um, and share the results. So with that, if everybody could place their microphones on mute, I'll turn the microphone over to you, sir.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so I would like to acknowledge all of my committee members, Dr. Angela McGrid as my dissertation chair, Dr. Susan Casil-Moses as my methodologist, Dr. Peter James as my content expert, and Dr. Nancy Birdie as my research consultant. And the title of my dissertation is Present Variance of Financial Self-Efficacy Explained by Financial Behavior, Knowledge, Attitude, and Skills among non-governmental workers in non-governmental employees. So previous research has showed that 93% of adults don't understand the uses of a credit card, and only 24% only have money saved up for retirement. And nearly two-thirds of respondents in the American Psychological Association stressed that reported that money was a source of stress for individuals in their lives. An understanding of financial knowledge, behavior, financial skills, financial attitudes, and financial self-efficacy may contribute to the enhancement of financial education. The purpose statement. It was not known if and to what extent financial behavior, financial knowledge, financial attitudes, and financial skills combined and individually explain the variance in financial self-efficacy among adults aged 25 to 55 working in non-governmental organizations in the United States. Similar to the problem statement is similar to the purpose statement. In regards to the theoretical foundations, there are three theoretical foundations that was focused on this study. The social cognitive theory that focuses on the human as the human, the human, the human agency model. And then the economic importance of financial literacy theory that focuses on two models, the environmental model and the customer behavior model. And then the theory of behavioral finances that focuses on two paradigms, which is the rational paradigm and the rational paradigm. So the research method and design. So a quantitative methodology was used in the purposes of using the variables to measure to use questionnaires and the statistical test to answer the research questions. A correlation predictive design was used to test a null hypothesis, and the purposes was to explain the variance. So this is the variable structure. So in regards to the financial self-efficacy scale, the financial the financial self-efficacy was defined conceptually and operationally, and this scale had 6 items, and this was measured on a 4-point Likert scale, and the ranges was from 6 to 24. Similar to the financial literacy questionnaire, this had 3 dimensions. The first dimension was the financial knowledge and the financial skills. These 2 dimensions had 5 items, and there were multiple choice questions, and they were either marked as incorrect or correct. And then for the financial attitude, that dimension had 10 items, and that was measured on a 7-point Likert scale, and the ranges from 1 to 7. And then the financial behavior that was also defined conceptually and operationally, and the financial management behavior scale. This was this scale had 15 items, and this was measured on a 5-point Likert scale, and the ranges was from 1 to 5. So the research questions. So there were 2 research questions. So the first research questions focused mostly on explaining the variance in the model with the predictors. And then the second research question was focusing on measuring the 4 predictors individually. So the first research question focuses on answering to explain the variance in the model altogether. And then the second research questions focus on answering, explain the variance explain the variance with the individual predictors. So the population and sample. So the target population was non-governmental workers, and the criteria included that they had to work at least 35 hours or more a week. And then their ages had to be between the ages of 25 to 55, and that they had to reside in the United States. And I priority sample size was 85. So I had to count 25% of that. So the ideal sample size was 106. And there was a total of 222 participants that completed the story. However, after data cleaning, the total sample size was 194. In regards to the internal consistency, the financial literacy questionnaire had an internal consistency of above 0.70, similar to these authors right here. And then the same thing goes for the financial revised management behavior scale. It had an internal consistency of above 0.70, similar to the authors that are mentioned here. And then in terms of the financial literacy questionnaire, the financial attitude dimension had a reliability of a point of above 0.70. However, the financial knowledge and the financial skills had an internal consistency of below 0.70. And one of the main reasons why this is so is because this scale was cognitive in nature. They were not psychometric in nature. And one of the reasons why this reliability was low is because when I tested my data, my most of the participants missed most of the questions, and most of the participants did not have had an education that was below a bachelor's degree. So in regards to that, this not may be true for all the participants, but in regards to the participants, my study focuses mostly on individuals in the non-governmental sector. So here's a prime example of one of the questions. So one of the questions for the financial literacy questionnaire asks, please tell me if this statement is true or false. Buying a single company stock usually provides a safer return than a stock mutual fund. Most of the participants answered true, but however, this was false. And the main reason being, if you're the average person that didn't have a college degree, your anticipation is maybe you have the brand, but they don't really know so much about finances. They're not that educated in that aspect. And so similar to financial knowledge, financial skills, the second question asks, like, if you were recently became a parent and you would like to find a solution that would allow your family to have more economic peace of mind in case something happens to you. Most of the participants answered to buy a mortgage. However, the correct answer was subscribing to an insurance policy. In regards to this, most individuals that don't have a college degree or an education may assume that you buying a mortgage is an asset. But however, in regards to buying a mortgage, it's more of a liability until that debt is paid off on the mortgage. So in terms of the problems with the internal items, with the correlation with the financial knowledge and the financial skills, um, if you had the correlations that was more than zero point 0.3, however, items 5 and 1 had a negative correlation, and the same thing goes for financial skills. And then the main reasons why the financial knowledge and the financial skills had a low reliability is because they're dichotomous in nature. However, the financial attitudes did pretty well because it's mostly their perceptions. And although the Cutter-Richards 21 used the internal reliability in XPSS, however, 59 of participants had less than a bachelor's degree. So in SurveyMonkey, most of the participants would just guess the answer if they didn't really have an idea of how to answer it. So in terms of data collection and data cleaning, um, the the data was collected through SurveyMonkey audience using an electronic portal. The participants were provided the informed consent before they completed the three surveys and the demographic questionnaire. 222 participants completed the survey within a 16 hours. 13 of the participants did not consent to the survey. 11 participants did not complete the survey, and 4 participants were disqualified because they did not meet the survey requirements. And this ended up in a total sample of 194. So the data analysis, so the descriptive statistics were computed to describe the sample and the sample variables. A multilinear regression was used to determine the variance explained with all the predictors together and all the predictors individually. So here is a sample of the categorical variables. As we can see here, 41, 41, the highest range was 41 to 45, which was 37 participants, which was the percentage was 19.07, and then men was the highest range, which was 99 participants, and that percentage was 51.03%. And then in terms of the work experience and the level of education, most of the participants, the highest range was the bachelor's degree, which was 90 participants, and that percentage was 46.39%. And then the highest range for the work experience was 10 years, which is 94 participants, which was 48.45%. Then in terms of the scripture statistics, we have the mean, we have the max, we have the medium, and we have the mean and the standard deviation, the skewness and kurtosis. In regards to the medium and the mean, the more closer these two are together, the more the data is evenly distributed. However, for the skewness is mostly ranges from -2 to +2. However, when we see here for the financial knowledge, the financial skills, and the financial attitudes fall within that range. Um, Even though this is not an issue, however, just as long as the residuals are within normal distribution is not really a problem. Then in terms of the assumption test, there's 8 assumptions for the multiple regression analysis. So the first assumption is that you have to have one criteria variable, which is not financial self-efficacy. So that assumption was met. And then the second assumption was that you had to have at least 2 predictors or more. And so that assumption was met. And the third assumption was independent of observations. As we can see, the Durbin-Watson statistics was 1.855, and the range from the Durbin-Watson is from 1.5 to 2.5. So that assumption was met. Then in terms of linearity, we can see here that financial behavior and financial skills had a positive relationship with financial self-efficacy. So as financial behavior increases, so does financial self-efficacy. And the same thing goes for financial skills. As financial skills increases, so does financial self-efficacy. And so this assumption was met. In terms of homostaticity, we see here that the residuals have to be evenly distributed, dispersed within the data, and it's kind of like a shotgun. So, but we see here that some of these points are clustered, and that is from the financial skills and the financial knowledge. So this assumption was met. Then in terms of multicollinearity, we look at the correlation matrix and the VF. And as we see here, the highest correlation for the predictors is 0.37. The next goes for 0.406, and the next one goes for 0.309, and then also 0.203. And then we see here for the VF scores is less than 10, so the assumption for most humanity was met. Then in terms of outlier, there was one outlier in my data, which was case nine, which was case 194. This was flagged as a multivariate outlier, but however, I tested for the Cook's distance and the leverage values, and the Cook's distance is the normal range has to be less than 1, and then for the leverage value has to be less than 0.2. So I decided to maintain that outlier because even though if I were to remove that outlier, it's not there's not really of a difference in the multi regression analysis if I were to rerun the analysis. So this assumption was met. Then in terms of normality, we see here that the data is skewed to the right, and we can see here that this outlier here with the case 94 um, is kind of like facing more to the right. So this assumption was met. Then in terms of the regression analysis model and the summary and the ANOVA table, we have the R, we have the R square, we have the adjusted R, we have the Durbin-Watson, and then we see here in terms of the R square, the variance in the model is 23.60% in the model. And then we can see that the p-value is less than 0.001. And so we reject the null for the null hypothesis for the first research question. Then in terms of other, compared to other studies, this study explained the variance, which was 23.60% of the variance within all the predictors. However, other studies did focuses on the relationship between financial knowledge and financial behavior. However, if I were to conduct my study again, I would have incorporated the 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 criteria of having a bachelor's degree for the participants so that my data can be I can have more my studies can be more generalizable if I incorporated that. Then the regression analysis and the coefficient table. So we look at the standard coefficients and we also look at the correlations per part. And in regards to the beta value, we see here the larger the beta value, the more bigger the variance is explained in the model. And to compute the variance explained, we square the part correlations. And then we can see here that financial behavior and financial skills has statistical significance in the model, while financial knowledge and financial attitudes did not. Then in terms of the effect size for the non-significance, we calculate the post hoc effect in this equation right here. And as we see, the small effect size here is really low. So in regards to the financial knowledge and the financial attitudes, the effect size as it gets smaller, there's really no effect in the variance explained in the model. Then in terms of other findings with regards to research question 2, White and Noor focused on college students, in particular business students. However, this study was focuses mostly that the variance was explained was mostly with financial knowledge and financial skills. And then in terms of theoretical foundations, the social cognitive theory, which explains the human agency model, gives contribute to the overall study. And then in terms of the other two predictors, financial knowledge and the financial attitudes, that were not statistically significant, other future research can focus on other theoretical framework that can be better suitable for the study, for other research. Then in terms of practical indications, um, financial education can be adopted in the non-governmental sector, which can include work interventions and policy initiatives to help promote financial education to employees and to also develop organizations to foster financial decision-making tactics. Then some of the strengths and the weaknesses. So the strengths of the study was that it was a comprehensive conceptual framework, the appropriateness of the rigor of the statistical analysis, the methodological alignment, and the internal consistencies for the three other skills. And then the weaknesses involved that it was a self-report, convenient sample, and internal consistently reliability for the financial knowledge and financial skills. Then for further research, it's recommended that other variables such as financial stress or organizational support systems or personal traits can be incorporated into the model. There needs to be a revision of the financial knowledge and the financial skills, revising these two subskills. Research in terms of replicating the study, other sectors such as cultural context, geographical locations, operations, sectors can be used to generalize the study in the model. Then in terms of potential practical applications, practitioners can use financial literacy that can help foster adult education for working professionals. These programs should gear towards not just only enhancing financial knowledge, but also a hands-on approach that can guide many of these professionals in budgeting and saving and also geared towards financial decision-making skills. And then also for the non-governmental sector, um, organizational leaders can also enhance financial workshops to help employees to create plans and target specific behavior that can help foster financial competence. And then the recommendations for the research consultant included that I had to revise the skewness and kurtosis of the variable since financial knowledge and the financial skills and the financial attitudes was more than point -2. And then I have done that by computing the tables that was revised in the manuscript on page 157 and 158. And these are my key references right here. And open up
Oh,
for questions.
okay, Bamidele, thank you so much. So if we could start with the content expert, and then it'll be followed by myself, and then Dr. Newman Lee, who has the questions from the chair, and then Dr. Brady, if you're okay with going last. Would that be okay? All right. Dr. James?
Yeah, thank you so much, Bamidele. Good work for sure. Definitely a reflection of your time and effort put into all of this. Thank you so much. I have a few questions, but I'll just narrow them down to one or two. My first one is kind of like a broad scope one. Non-governmental organizations, non-governmental employees. Talk to that a little bit. When I think of non-governmental initially, I know I saw the definitions in your content, but non-governmental. Is that like an NGO, or is it just those who are not working in a government space?
Yeah, it's mostly non-governmental, so like an NGO. So workers that do not work specific for the government. So like they're like private companies
Got it.
that deal with like human things like women or children. So just pretty
Hmm.
much like private companies.
Anybody that doesn't work with the government. Got it. Okay, that's what I thought it was. Perfect. So my follow-on question to that is the distinction. Um, and maybe this had to do with the research that preceded your research. Why non-governmental employees and not inclusive of governmental employees? What was the distinction or the importance of that distinction? I couldn't quite get that from the reading per se.
Okay, so in terms of the research, non-governmental employees get defined pension plans.
Got it.
And so and rather non-governmental employees, they get defined contribution plans. So they pretty much offer, they probably have to go and actually contribute to their retirement from their employer.
Mhm.
And so it's not a lot of research where these specific employees can actually get some type of skills to enhance their financial literacy.
Got it. Okay. Thank you for that clarification. I truly appreciate that. Uh, I saw a couple of slides that you showed today, but also in the content, I saw some information on demographic data, um, men versus women, college educated versus not, ages, age characterizations. Describe the importance of that delineation for your overall research. I definitely see it for available for future research, but how might it have impacted your current research here?
Um, Other research mostly focus on mostly the college generation. I mean,
Hmm.
mostly in terms of like the college generation. So like researchers did mostly just like people enrolled in college.
Hmm.
And I focused mostly on a specific target population, which was 25 to 55 in their prime years.
Got it.
So in order for me to create some type of gap, this research was never done before.
Hmm.
So that's why I decided to focus mostly on non-gov non-government worker within this specific age bracket.
Got it. Got it. Um, Two more questions around the audience, and then I'll be done. Um, Number one. This is kind of like a broad question about the Survey Monkey. If you had it all do it all over again, would you use a Survey Monkey audience as you did in this research?
No.
Huh. Interesting. Please tell.
I would use probably like a different sentiment or a different vendor.
Yeah.
Even though, there's some pros and cons using other vendors, but like
Mhm.
um I feel like, because I never use them before, but I feel like using other vendors can probably, help me to get more the data more efficiently. So
Maybe you weren't happy with the process of Survey Monkey, maybe? Is that what I'm hearing from you?
yeah.
Okay, cool. Last question. The rel and I put this down, the reliability or the results in light of the fact that the audience was being compensated. They were getting paid to take this. How might that have impacted? And I think I put this down somewhere too. Might this had some social desirability bias? Might there have been some social desirability bias? Obviously, they were self-reporting, but now how might this compensation have played into how they responded, or maybe just did it because of the financial gain? Hopefully that made sense.
Yeah. So in terms of the financial gain is it's like most of the participants, like 59 out of the participants didn't have a college degree.
Sure.
So that biases comes in where if you don't really know the answer, you just guess anything and you're getting paid to do it in the first place.
Mhm.
So but if you're a college graduate or you're a business graduate or any type of college graduate or you have some idea or some knowledge of, finances, even though that not be the case, but it's like that bias may come into play because they don't really have that people won't be able to answer that question more effectively. because they haven't they're not been taught it.
Got it. Okay. Thank you so much for addressing my few questions there. Again, nice work, Dr. Steele Moses. Back to
Okay,
you.
good questions, Dr. James. Okay, now buckle your seatbelt, Bombadil, because here they come. All right. You talked about on the reliability slide, I think it was, that the questions were supposed to correlate at point 0.3 or more. And you pointed out to us that one of them was negative and one of them was point 0.4 something. I don't remember the exact number. But why is it so important? Because you didn't really explain it to us. I want you to explain what you mean by this. Why was it so important that the items correlate at the point 0.3? Like, why?
The main reason why is because in terms of the instrument
Uh-huh.
and the instrument has to be the same in terms of how they correlate to each other. So that's why it's important. It has to
Hmm.
be the same construct when it correlates together.
Hmm. So you mean like the items need to be measuring the same thing?
Yes.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay. Got it. Now that makes sense. Because I was like, wait. I wasn't following. I really wasn't following what you were talking about. All right. I get it now. I mean, I sort of knew it, but I wanted to hear you say it. But anyway, okay. The next question. I met you at the quantitative office hours that Dr. Castile has every week. And Dr. Castile often has past graduates, such as yourself will be soon, share knowledge that they've gained from their dissertation. Okay? So he's asked you to, in your own words, don't go back to the slides, but in your own words, what are the assumptions for standard multiple regression, how you test them, and what they mean? So could you explain that to us like we were part of those students in that group, please?
Okay, so the standard multiple regression includes 8 assumptions. The first assumption is that you have to have at least one criteria variable, and that assumption is met. And then the second assumption is that you have to have at least two or more predictors.
Hmm.
And then the third assumption is that you have to have independent of observations. And then the ranges between the Durbin-Watson has to be between 1.5 to 2.5. And then you have to have a linear relationship between the predictor variable and the criteria variable.
Hmm.
And then you had to have also homoscedasticity, meaning that the data is evenly dispersed above and below the residual lines. And then you also have to test for multiplicarity, meaning that you have to test for the coefficient, the correlations matrix, and then the VF. And the VF has to be less than 10, and
Hmm.
then the correlation has to be less than 0.70. And then you have to also test for outliers, and then you have to also test for numerality. And numerality incorporates testing for the PP plots and then the histogram.
Hmm. And what about the outliers?
The outliers, those are multivariate outliers. And
Hmm.
in terms of the regression analysis, you test for the Cook's distance and the leverage value.
Hmm.
And the Cook's distance has to be less than 1, and then
Hmm.
the the leverage value has to be less than 0.2.
So if the students ask you about whether you should compute box plots, what would you tell them?
That wouldn't be so necessary because box plots is not a requirement because that's focusing on the univariate outliers, but the multi-regression analysis doesn't look at the univariate outliers. You only look at the multivariate outliers.
That's right. And sometimes students get confused about that because they're part of the demographic output when you run the demographics in the descriptive. So sometimes they think that they're supposed to report that. You're right. That's very good. Now, you already kind of told us about the standard betas, so I won't ask you that question. If you could start your dissertation from the very beginning, kind of going back what Dr. James was saying, what would you have done differently?
I would have incorporated other variables and excluded the variables of the financial knowledge and the financial skills and
Hmm.
incorporate variables such as financial stress and financial inclusion and get
Hmm.
a more of a theoretical framework that measures psychometric variables within the
Hmm.
model because um, the financial knowledge and financial skills are more they're more cognitive in nature and they're not measured psychometrically.
Hmm. And just like other researchers kind of used a homogeneous sample, right? Like they used finance students or they used students in business programs, et cetera. I think your point was well taken that when you have such a diversity, right, of of participants that were like had less than college, then some had bachelor's degrees, some had more, but there was so much diversity in there that I think that really probably did cause some problems with those two subscales because like when you and I and Dr. McGill looked at the responses on those questions, most of the folks who didn't get the answer right were um, either had high school or some college or, you know, even the associate degree, some of them did get the answer right. But I think if you're not, I agree with you. I don't think if you're exposed to that, like I know myself, my mother always said to me, pay yourself first, even if it's only $1, put it in your savings account, right? So I learned that as a child from a little girl. Every time my grandma would give me $10, I had to go put $1 in my savings account, right? So I agree with you. I think that when you have too much diversity like you had, especially where knowledge is concerned, it may not hold. And that's what we found. I think just like you said, hindsight's 2020, right? I mean, maybe having the bachelor's degree folks in higher would have been a better idea. But I think sometimes we do what we do because we think it's right, right? And then we later make recommendations for other people. If I were doing this, I wouldn't do it again, so that's good. Now, um, I know we have some of the students from the quantitative office hours here today, and you talked about you had an outlier. Can you explain to them in your own words what process you went through to decide that you were going to retain that outlier? What were the steps you went through?
So I first of all I actually I first of all I kind of like I did the steps where you actually retain the outlier
Hmm.
and then and I ran the remote regression analysis again. And then when I took the outlier out, I also did the Cook's distance, and then I test the leverage value to see how if it was an effect on if there was any effect on the regression analysis, and I found out that it wasn't a effect on the regression analysis. So I decided that it was better for you to just keep it in there because
Hmm.
there's no effect on there.
Right. And if I remember correctly, when we did that, I think both of the models was exactly the same, 23.6. Remember?
Yes,
And wasn't it true that that person had like a perfect score?
in financial self-efficacy, yes.
Yeah. And do you remember that conversation we had about that?
Yeah, like that conversation is like, this person had a high level financial self-efficacy. So just because this person has a high financial self-efficacy, we can't just assume that it's an outlier. This person just may be more educated with finances,
Hmm.
with financial self-efficacy.
Exactly. It's just like if you ask me and Dr. Castillo and Dr. Bridier, and we took a self-efficacy on statistics, we would probably score pretty high too, because all three of us would say, "Wow, we really know statistics. That doesn't make us an outlier, right?"
Yes.
Exactly. even though it did kind of mess up the histogram, but everything else, that was the only thing it did. And that's why we decided like to leave it in and just point that out. Now, with effect size, when you don't have something that's significant, right? And we computed the effect size of those variables. What does effect size really mean?
Um, what it means is that depending on the it kind of like says like the percentage and the variance has a bigger effect on the model. That's what it
Hmm.
means specifically.
Hmm. Yeah.
And
Go ahead.
and the and then in terms of like the small effect size, if it's getting too smaller in the model, especially for the two predictors that I had, which is financial knowledge and financial skills, um, it is not of a big importance because they didn't it has no importance in the model.
Hmm. And do you think if this is a true statement in all samples, or is it only specific to this sample?
Uh, maybe it's probably a true statement, probably for just this sample, probably
Hmm.
this study here, but not
Hmm.
all studies because all studies have their differences.
Hmm. Yeah, but and I agree with you because some folks like they saw like financial knowledge was predictive. Now a lot of people don't report their effect sizes, right? But I think in this sample, what happened with this sample, going back to Dr. James's point, there's advantages to collecting data for third party, but I think sometimes too much heterogeneity like this, too much differences between the groups and stuff, it kind of can cause some problems. Like if we were to go say to like all the employees at Grand Canyon University or something where there was more similarities between the employees, we might have a totally different outcome, you know? So yeah, I think that's a really good point. So that's all the questions I have. So I'm going to turn the microphone over to Dr. Newmanly.
Thank you. Bamidele, I thought that was a very nice presentation. You moved through it very quickly, and I know we appreciate it, but you answered some pretty tough questions there from Dr. Steele Moses, so appreciate that. When I looked at your histogram, I was like, oh, well, look at that, that middle that, you've got a beautiful, kind of normal range in there. So, but I'm going to ask the questions from Dr. McGill, your chair. So he says, way back when this study first began 4 years ago, one of the reasons you focused on the population of non-governmental workers in their prime income earning savings years was because, unlike most government workers, non-governmental workers do not have guaranteed defined benefit retirement years based on their plan. The plans almost all non-governmental workers have are defined contributions, where they and their employer make contributions periodically, but essentially they must manage their own retirement funds. So this requires a very good understanding of finance and investment. Now, given that and thinking about those non-governmental workers, such as your study, if you were presenting your research findings to them today, what would you tell them or advise them about financial planning?
What I will advise them is Um, do you think you have enough money saved up for retirement if you're contributing, to, if you're contributing to your employer, and do you have the skills or the resources to know where to go and how to actually increase your knowledge of how to go about saving for your retirement?
That's good. I think a lot of people that do not have employment that comes with a pension are, you know, they kind of grew up with the idea that, well, Social Security is there for my retirement. And so I think it's interesting. This is really this is a deep topic, and it's one I've thought about, and I occasionally I'll look at medium savings from different age groups that they have set aside for retirement. And generally, what I find as I look at different studies is it's way too low. And I do think that non-governmental, non-pension employers do not prepare their employees to have the ability to manage their finances, and I wish they would. Okay, that was my question, however. But Dr. McGill's second got a three-part here. Given that you have this new knowledge based on your research, what do you plan to do with it? Are you going to write something? You're going to teach? You're going to publish? Well, I didn't realize there were five parts. Where are we likely to see you in 5 years? Can you get all those? So, what do you plan to do with this study, Mama Daly?
So I do plan to publish books in a couple of journal articles. I do also intend to also work in um, the the financial sector as a financial analyst, where I can consult with businesses and individuals.
Very good. Okay, so it sounds like if you become a financial analyst, then you are going to have some teaching within that kind of a position because they share their knowledge. Okay, so that's where we might see you in 5 years. That's all from Dr. McGill. Um, I enjoyed the presentation very much. It's one that I've followed, because it's so important that people who do not have, the luxury of pensions, good pensions, um, need to be aware of this sort of future. Thank you. That's all I have. And we go on to Dr. Bridier, I believe.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you, Don Bamidele. That was a wonderful presentation. You have come so far from when we first met, when you were working on your first three chapters of your proposal, and we met during quantitative office hours. So I'm really impressed with how you've grown as a student throughout the dissertation process. And you look very nice today for your presentation. I appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you.
So let's go back to kind of where we started when you were working on your proposal. You initially had planned to use a Pearson correlation for your analysis. So talk to us about that. What were the benefits of switching from a Pearson correlation to multiple linear regression?
So a Pearson R is mostly you're just focusing on the relationship between the variables, and in my proposal where I was just mostly just focused on the variables, in the research, it's showing that these relationships already existed. So in terms of that, your study won't be that feasible, and you're not really contributing to the existing body of knowledge if you're just focusing on these variables. Other researchers said that these variables exist. So in order for you to make your study different, you have to do a different test or a different approach. So that's why I chose to do the most regression analysis to see the variance, because none of the researchers did that. So that's what makes it different.
Okay, good. And so, and you found a lot in your multiple regression analysis, right? I mean, you may not have had significant results throughout. What was it? 23.6% of the variance was explained by the combined model. But
Yes.
had you done a Pearson correlation, would you have learned as much as you did doing the multiple linear regression?
Uh, no.
Yeah.
No, because I kind of like really expand my mind to learn things, and it's a growing process. So at first I was hesitant, but like I just said I want to deep down. I just want to learn how if my study can contribute to the literature.
Right. And had you done a Pearson correlation rather than multiple linear regression, you probably wouldn't have found out the problems with the instrument that you used. So that was pretty profound, finding out about the psychometric properties of the instrument and how, because initially the instrument, if I look back at chapter 3, the developers of the instrument actually had 0.86 for the reliability of the knowledge and 0.82 for the reliability of the skills subscale. So had you not asked the demographic questions that you asked and really dug a little bit deeper in your analysis, you wouldn't have been able to realize what the problems were with the instrument, right?
Yes.
Okay. So you learned a lot, probably more than you expected to learn. Okay, so SurveyMonkey audience. I had another student a few months ago. She actually graduated in May, and she used SurveyMonkey audience as well, and she had some issues with it. And she initially did not want to use a demographic questionnaire, and I kind of pushed her to do that. And then she realized when she did her data analysis that her sample was not representative of her target population. So her results weren't usable. She's working with her chair now to collect more data so that she can publish. But she did graduate. So I kind of feel like, based on your responses to Dr. James, that you kind of have a sour taste for SurveyMonkey audience. So talk to us about that. What were some of the problems you have with SurveyMonkey audience?
Well, the thing about it is that with SurveyMonkey audience, even though I got IRB approval that quickly when I used SurveyMonkey audience, I was so surprised that I was able to collect all of my responses in 16 hours.
Yeah.
But it seemed pretty feasible, to use it, but it was just like I was just kind of being a little bit icky because I actually anticipated to only get 205 participants, but I actually got more than expected because I also used my other I used Facebook group to also incorporate that. So maybe that's why I got more participants than expected. But I was just kind of like I wasn't really that fond of SurveyMonkey because even though I paid a little bit over a minimum amount to get that participants, it's just like um, even with working with SurveyMonkey, like, everything is mostly through email, so you can't really talk to them, per se, but it's like I just feel maybe probably using a different platform would have been a better approach for me.
Okay. What do you think if you hadn't had the demographic questionnaire and asked those questions about the level of their education? Would you have been able to figure out what the reliability issues were with the instrument?
No.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm actually really questioning our use of SurveyMonkey audience or our students' use of SurveyMonkey audience. It's kind of since the dissertation defense in when was it, March, with a student that graduated in May. And with what you told us today, I'm just really questioning the use of SurveyMonkey audience for our students. So just kind of food for thought. So your response to Dr. Newman Lee about what you're going to do after graduation, you mentioned working as a financial analyst. So let's say in your role as a financial analyst, a corporation or a non-government organization calls you up and they want you to consult on their organization. So based on your findings, what recommendations would you make for designing a financial education program for those people within that organization?
First of all, I'll start with a seminar first to actually get them acquainted to the process. And then also just, sit down one-on-one and then incorporate certain programs that will be beneficial to that organization.
Okay. And what programs might be beneficial based on your results?
Based on my results, it's mostly just like financial literacy, like workshops that talk a lot about saving for retirement, budgeting, how to go about, how to manage your retirement plans, how to be more financial savvy.
Okay, good. So do you foresee conducting research in the future?
Yes.
Okay, good. So do you think you would replicate this study, only do things a little differently?
Yes.
Okay, what would you do differently?
What I would do differently is that I would remove the financial knowledge and the financial skills and use a different variable such as the financial skills or the financial inclusion, because I did notice that other researchers use financial inclusion and the financial stress. However, I will also, if I was going to use those variables, I want to make sure that the theoretical foundations incorporate in instruments that were more psychometric in nature instead of having these dichotomous variables that were cognitive in nature.
Okay, excellent. All right, thank you. That's all the questions I have.
Okay, so now at this point, I would like to ask all of the visitors to exit. And if you don't exit, I will help you exit. We appreciate you coming. So hopefully you learned something from Barmadale's presentation, and it'll help you in your future dissertation work. And Barmadele, do you have any questions for us before I put you in the waiting room?
No.
Okay. So I want you to, as I explained to you before, we have two processes we have to conduct today. One is we have to vote on your success or not success of your defense. Second, we have to discuss what's called the Dean's Read, and those are papers that Dr. McGill will be submitting later after your defense. So if you're in the waiting room for a little bit, don't stress. I will be back to get you. Just stay where you are, okay?
Okay.
All right, you can drink water, whatever you want, but just stay there.
Okay.
All right, I'm gonna put you in the waiting room. Do, 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 do. Goodbye.
You might have to move Gwendolyn Evans out.
Yep, I will surely move her out. And Peter James is part of us, isn't he?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
he's here.
Okay, cool. All right. Nancy, I will say,
Stop
all
recording.
through, all through. Oh, I'm
Wait,
sorry.
wait, stop
Yeah,
recording.
my recording, thank you. Okay. All right, Bomadeli. Well, here we are. We're back in the room. How do you think you did?
I did think I did pretty decent.
Uh-huh. Were there areas you thought you could have done better in?
Mostly just in presenting my words because I do feel it a bit tense.
You feel a bit tense. Well, let me tell you this, that the committee was very favorable in your presentation, and we have agreed that you pass. And we're not going to get the paperwork until Dr. Andy votes tomorrow. But three out of four is a pass, no matter what. So you have passed your oral defense. You can tell your parents you passed your oral defense and that you don't have to take another class.
Okay.
All right. And I want you to
Congratulations.
celebrate with your family because I know they're going to be very proud of you as well as Dr. Andy is proud of you and I'm proud of you.
Okay.
Okay. Anything else anyone else would like to share with Bombadil?
Nice work,
Abdel,
Mama.
just want to say congratulations through this hard work. I know this process. I always call this process a hazing process. Nevertheless, you survived it. So congratulations, and definitely God bless you as you continue to move forward.
I was glad to be here, Bamidele, because Andy is, he's such a good, caring chair, and I know you've learned that over time, and I know the work Dr. Silmos has put into it, and clearly Dr. James too, from the questions he asked. So, anyway, I've been aware of you, for a long time. Andy and I have had some conversations, but I want to say congratulations. Feel good about this. The distance you've come, marathon for good.
Dr. Nancy?
Congratulations, outstanding work. And are you planning to walk at graduation in October?
Yes. So, I did book my ticket, but I had to kind of like, I know I had to pay the graduation fee, and I know it just, I'm assuming that, once, you have the D65, then I think 60 days before that, I think I can, but like, it just depends on like formatting and all that other stuff. So,
Okay. Yeah, you'll get
D6,
there.
I think
And
it's
I'll
the
see you there as
D6,
well.
it's the D65 by August 15th. So you're going to meet
Yep.
that. You're going
Yep.
to meet graduation requirements.
Yep.
Okay.
So